In my 20s, she sat me down, and I talk about this in the book. She said, "Why did you never take your writing seriously?" And I said, "Well, of course I did. I love to write. I love to write." She said, "No, why did you never pursue it professionally?" And to be honest with you, I don't think I even realized this at the time that she said that to me. I just didn't really understand there was such a thing as a Latina writer. I just didn't understand that existed.
This is our first episode that resulted from a Twitter meet cute. One of our listeners suggested that we speak to Tony and Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright Quiara Alegria Hudes, and she enthusiastically agreed on Twitter. But she warned us we'd have to move fast. After penning 3 musicals and 2 plays, Quiara is now writing a memoir, and she's about to disappear into her work. But right now, she's here.
Here I am.
What's the memoir?
It's about the late 80s and early 90s when I kind of came of age as a girl in Philadelphia. And it's my spiritual awakening during the time of the crack epidemic, the AIDS crisis, and how I became a writer and a storyteller through a series of kind of spiritual events.
You've told so many other people's stories. What is it like now to tell your own?
It's really intense. It required a different process of me. I think I've also always told stories under the guise of fiction. Even though my plays come out of family stories, I insist that they're fictional plays because there are fictional elements there. But a memoir, I can't do that. I can't really fudge it. And so to really go back with my memory and insist on accuracy, on my point of view, especially when I'm dealing with things like, did my cousin or did my cousin not pass away from AIDS? And still there's not a clear answer in the family about it. So what do I do about that? How do I gain clarity and tell the truth when there's still not answers?
I also have just blackout years, like years I don't really remember with the same clarity in which I remember other years.
I thought I did too. I thought I didn't remember. I thought I didn't know. And what I found is I do actually remember more probably than I'd like to, that telling myself I didn't remember and being active and not remembering was a kind of temporary state I let myself be in while I didn't want to deal with some of the stuff from the past.
How did you excavate that memory?
Through a series of writing rituals. Every piece that I've written has a different process, and I learn how to write it as I go. With this piece, it involved taping up all my ancestors' pictures on the wall, so all of my tias who aren't with us anymore, lighting them some candles and saying some prayers so that I felt safe. I felt in a safe place. I felt loved, and I felt trust in my kind of emotional space so that I could then kind of go into the forest, not following any path, and see what I would discover there. And some of the discoveries were incredible and delightful, and some of them were super painful.
Your work and your spirituality, and at the beginning, your mother's spirituality, are so deeply entangled. I mean, she told you were a playwright.
She did. I didn't know at the time. I was in my mid-20s, and I had written all my life. As a child might play stickball in the street or might color in a coloring book. That was just fun for me. And I loved it. I did it nonstop. But in my 20s, she sat me down, and I talk about this in the book. She said, "Why did you never take your writing seriously?" And I said, "Well, of course I did. I love to write. I love to write." She said, "No, why did you never pursue it professionally?" And to be honest with you, I don't think I even realized this at the time that she said that to me. I just didn't really understand there was such a thing as a Latina writer. I just didn't understand that existed. As soon as she said that to me, I thought, oh, damn, of course. But it had just never really clocked in the currency of what one wants to be when you grow up.
I think part of what resonates with me about your story is that you are on this path, and it's the thing you've always wanted to do, which is music. And then all of a sudden, as I've read the story, you go to your mom and you say, "I'm bored. And I don't understand how it's possible that I have what I thought I wanted. And I'm bored." And I think where you're lucky is that you realize that fairly young.
It was helpful. Sometimes I wish it had come even earlier, but I guess I can't complain like you say. It was very helpful. I mention in my book that it might possibly be the shortest conversation my mom and I ever had also. It wasn't some long walk me through the steps of what she was thinking. She just pointed this thing out, and my heart said yes in like the quietest, simplest way possible. And I knew my life changed forever. What was neat in that instance is that I was on my life's path. I had just never named it. And I think that one of the emotional elements of writing the memoir, but also of being a writer in general, is that actually we have life, we know life, we live life, we are saturated, but we don't oftentimes name our experience. And so the process of naming oneself, the process of living your life happens. It happens every day. But the process of really looking at that and describing it and being honest about what you're describing is trickier than one would think.
Your mom is a santera.
Yes.
What is your earliest memory of her practicing?
Well, before her practice as a santera really entered my life, my earliest memory is of her, I must have been 5 or so, taking me outside and praying in Spanish. And my dad didn't speak Spanish, so my Spanish was shaky. So this was kind of a way that she was teaching me Spanish, but it was also a way that she was teaching me prayer. And I definitely remember that God had a feminine ending when she said it, and that God had a lot of names. And so I was trying to remember all of the names that God had. And it's a very warm memory of mine. I felt safe and I felt excited because it was a secret, because my dad was an atheist too. So my mom had to create a secret practice so that she wouldn't be insulted or questioned. And she let me be witness. And I knew that was special. I knew that invitation was special. So my first memory is either of blood sacrifice in my living room or of her being a spirit medium. I can't exactly remember which chronologically came first. Both were very terrifying and confusing to me as a child, but also mesmerizing. So it was like that thing I didn't want to see, but I really wanted to see at the same time. And then her path has continued on to embrace other traditions as well. So she is like a spiritual woman walking through this world and through many traditions.
You've told a lot of your family stories, again, to your point, fictionalized, but you've drawn a lot of inspiration from them. How do they feel about that?
They feel good. You know, they call me every once in a while. I know I got your next play for you. And it was a learning curve. The first 2 plays, I was so scared. It's almost like the scaredest I've ever been in my life, because what I was scared of is I was about to lose my family member. Like, I had a play. My first play in New York was called Elliot, a Soldier's Fugue. That was before In the Heights. So it really was my first play in New York. And it was based on my cousin. And he came. I had interviewed him. And then he came to see the show. And I was sitting next to him. And he was like holding my knee so I wouldn't be shaking so hard. And I thought, like, he's going to see what I did. And I'm going to lose him. I'm going to lose my cousin. I was so scared. And in a few minutes into the play, I just saw, like, tears down his cheek, and that was the rest of it. That's how he behaved the rest of the play. He just wept quietly, and afterwards he said, "Thank you." The second play was called Water by the Spoonful, and my cousin, who I wrote that about, she came to see it. That was about addiction and recovery. So that one was like even about more open wounds. And again, I thought, oh my God, I'm going to lose her. Why did I do this? I'm about to lose my cousin. I'd much rather have my cousin than have a play I wrote. In fact, she also wept, and that play unlocked whole new conversations, things she had never told me about her struggle with addiction and recovery. And so I think they're used to it now, and they kind of find it to be a little bit of a truth vessel. It hurts sometimes, no doubt, but there's also a lot of highs and exhilaration that come with it too.
What is the responsibility of your work?
I think it's to leave a legacy, and hopefully one that's really honest about what the struggles were. There's something that I think of as like cultural records equality. There's all sorts of equality, right? There's equality in the law. Obviously, I'm not a litigator. I'm not a representative. I don't draft laws. There's equality in the workplace. Like, there's so many different kinds of equality, and the kind I'm concerned with is cultural records equality. Is our story told to the extent that other stories are told? That's what I'm concerned with. That's the responsibility of my work, to create that cultural records equality that simply says, we were here, this is what it was like, And because this story has been told by me and also by her and also by him, us together, we cannot be denied. Our existence cannot be denied.
How much then does the context of consumption matter? If the majority of the audience is still white, or at least non-Latino, and the majority of the audience is very wealthy, and we're telling the truth of our stories, but there are complexities of those stories, and it can be about a life of service and a traumatic time. It can be about addiction. When you have to explore the underbelly of stories that aren't often told to a group of people who may only know this community through your stories, what then?
Well, this is part of the question I was asking when I thought it's time to write a book because, books reach different audiences. And I was ready to see, okay, what other audiences are out there for the stories that I'm telling. And I actually have gotten to know the theater audience so well in my career as a playwright that it started infiltrating my writing space and my creative space where I'd already be bracing myself against certain reactions, feeling like, how will cultural insiders or outsiders see this? And so I wanted to write for an audience that I had no expectations of. Therefore, I could create who my audience was.
If you are as busy as I am, then I have a life hack for you. I've recently been enjoying Green Chef. It's a USDA certified organic company, and they have a diverse array of meal plans with plenty of options to choose from each week. You can choose paleo, vegan, vegetarian, pescatarian, Mediterranean, heart smart, lean and clean, keto, gluten-free, and omnivore. For $50 off your first box of Green Chef, go to greenchef.us/Latina. Their recipes are quick and easy with step-by-step instructions, chef's tips, and photos to guide you along. This week, I made my husband and kiddo salmon and piccata sauce. It tasted fresh and delicious, and my daughter might have even eaten the sauce with a spoon. Best of all, everything is hand-picked and delivered right to your door, so no more decision fatigue. Let Green Chef do the meal planning, grocery shopping, and most of the prep for you. For $50 off your first box of Green Chef, go to greenchef.us/Latina. What was it like the first few sessions in which you were working on In the Heights?
It was so fun. That was a really fun project. In some ways, each piece you write kind of takes on the process takes on the spirit of the piece, right? So In the Heights, very strategically, is a piece about our joy and about our celebration and our party, about our hopes and our love. It's such a positive piece, and we wanted it to be that way for very real reasons. There wasn't a lot of portrayal like that. A lot of the actors who came to the piece had mostly been working on like crime series as the criminals or like possibly crime series as the cops. So those sessions reflected the spirit. It felt like It Feels to Watch the Show, which is playful, kind of pretty up-tempo. We would oftentimes walk around the neighborhood, me and Lynn, and because he grew up in Washington Heights and Inwood, he would show me favorite old spots, like walks down memory lane, a lot of storytelling, telling our family stories, showing pictures of our silly cousins as we found our way to the story.
One of the things I find interesting about you as someone who's never met you until today is that you are regarded as an intellectual, and yet you also self-present as so heart first. Does that sound true to you? I mean, is that me interpreting you, or is that how you see yourself?
I mean, that's a huge compliment. I feel moved by that description of me. It sounds like someone I would like to be.
But you're also so dry so that I can repeat it back to you. You're like, I'm so moved by that.
You need a little high and low. I am very dry. I think I learned at a very early age through some experiences to make myself very, very small. And I actually think that my dry demeanor comes out of that.
Tell me about one of those times.
In my shuffling between families, it was made clear in the household that I was not raised in that my presence was generally in the way and a hindrance. And there were rules about I could not go to every place in the house. I could not interrupt certain family activities that involved other family members. And so I remember, as early as 7 years old saying, okay, I will keep to myself. I will make myself very small and unnoticeable. I can do that. And so I think the dry demeanor comes out of me saying, like, you won't even know I'm here. Like, I will not take up a lot of space.
But you take up so much space on the page.
I think deciding that I wanted to be a writer, part of that decision when I had that conversation with my mom and when my heart just simply said yes, was a decision instinctively, which was, now is the time to take up space. Now is the time to know that you are going to be large. I think that's part of what she was asking me and part of what I said yes to.
Again, to reflect you as I see you back to you, you also seem incredibly aligned. Like I meet a lot of people and I interview a lot of people where who they say they are is not who shows up in the room or not who shows up on the page, where with you, it actually feels like it is all part and parcel of the same. And what I'd like to know as a person who in this moment in my life feels incredibly misaligned is that work or is that essence?
No, it's work. I might have been born knowing how to do it. Kids are pretty good at it. I think kids are pretty aligned. But I was a good student and learned quickly not to do that so much. And I think the process of deciding to be a Latina artist, of deciding to be a professional woman, of deciding to be very ambitious with my artistic goals and have children, I've had to come up with like a lot of strategies of how to actually pull that off. How to stay aligned. It's kind of the spiritual version of staying on message. Well, I'm not a brand, but I am a person, and I do try to stay aligned.
I asked you earlier what you felt the responsibility of your work was, but I want to ask a follow-up to that, which is, has there ever been a time where you have failed in that responsibility?
Yeah, sure. I think that the pain of being a writer, part of the pain of it, and I love what I do deeply, but it is a perpetual series of failures. I can't say I've ever written something that I find perfect. I've definitely had the experience only once or twice where I've written something that I find complete or done, that I don't want to continue to rewrite once it's published. But even those I know are flawed pieces. And the flaws are aesthetic. Sometimes okay, the language was beautiful, the poetry was beautiful, but the plot was lacking in this certain moment. And sometimes the failure can be, like you said, about the responsibility. So those are probably a little harder to get into, but, did I lean too much into the tragedy or too much into the comedy of this? Is this an overrepresentation of our sorrow and not enough of a staking claim to our joy and our fun? So I'm still thinking about that with writing the memoir. I knew it was going to be about how AIDS took family members from us, how drugs took family members from us. And so I knew I had to really create a math formula where that joy and that love that we shared was just as present, or I was going to regret it later.
When you are writing, do you still seek approval?
I'm trying to less and less. Early on in one's career, you're literally seeking approval. You need a job. Someone has to approve of your writing to produce your play. It is actually part of the hustle. And it can be very confusing. Do I need someone's approval to just simply get my work done? Or do I need someone's approval to tell my story? Those, for me, got swapped a few times. And that can be very confusing. And I'm still, it's still a daily question I ask.
I'm writing my first book, and I'm realizing that I'm not a writer in the sense that I rather talk about things than put them down on the page. And it is
Sounds like a writer to me.
It is both alarming to me and really validating to hear you say that it's never done. Because I imagine that the writers, like capital W, hit a point where you're like, that's right, it's all perfect now, and I press send. So if it never feels to you like it's done, what is it driven then by? Deadlines? An editor who comes in and just tells you it's done?
Yeah, if it weren't for deadlines, it would just be hell. You'd just live with the insufficiency of what you wrote for too long. Then the piece would just become how insufficient it was. But you want to talk about it, but you don't actually want to sit and write it. This is why writers are friends. Like Lin-Manuel comes over a lot. We're very good friends at this point. And if I could have a nickel for every time he said to me or I said to him, guess what, Lin? I got my next play. Here's what it's about. I could get a lot of corner store candy with all those nickels. For the ones that actually pan out, it's a smaller amount, and same with him to me. Like, we've always got ideas. We're always getting revved about things. And sometimes the ideas go, just kind of fall away.
Good, because I need you to focus on the movie. I've been waiting for this movie for a very long time.
It's going to happen at just the right time. So thank you for waiting for it. But I think the In the Heights movie is happening now for a reason. It's intense. When we were first talking about this movie, it feels like forever we've been trying to make it. It was in a different political climate, in a different administration. And that might be the case by the time it comes out, but it might not. And so I think to put a piece about what Latinos know in particular about community and about celebration, about partying, about joy, about family, I think the world could really use that right now. I don't think this is just a story for Latinos. I actually think we're onto some really good secrets that this nation's going to benefit from. I think the In the Heights movie it's so much about what do we give our children. It's so much about how do we celebrate even with the modest means that we have. How do we hold that up to the sky and say thank you and throw a dance party and sing our joy. And I've walked a long path within the Heights. And so I think I've earned the right to write a few surprises in there, too, so that people who think they know everything about In the Heights, there will be some new elements, too.
How can you separate Quiara the person from the creator?
Oh, dear. I can't. I have to keep my life very simple because I am not good at multitasking. Well, let's see. So I don't know if it's Quiara the person or Quiara the playwright, but she writes. She cooks dinner for her husband and children. She takes walks. She does some activism work. And that's actually pretty much it. There's a lot of other things she could do.
No friends?
I've been blessed with some friends, and they tend to be the ones that are very much understand that when I see them in 3 years, I still love them.
Because of your work or because of your introversion?
Because of my work. Because I don't have time. Quiara the playwright and Quiara the person don't have time to be a true friend all the time. Huh. But I do have time to have a family, have my writing life be as full as I want it to be. And that's pretty much it, actually. Did
you ever make that overt to friends?
I've certainly had a few conversations with friends. I think some friends kind of understand that instinctively, and others have said, you ignore me. Like, where are you? I need to lean on you more frequently. And I've had to be really honest and say, I'm so sorry I can't provide that for you as a friend.
So I identify with that and at the same time feel that I am almost not ready to admit that to myself, to say I don't have the time because there's something about that while true seems selfish.
Yes. See, here is the thing, okay? This is why Quiara the writer and Quiara the human are not different, because that is the same in art and life. You can feel so bad saying no to a friend because it feels like, oh, I'm a bad friend.
Which must mean I'm a bad person.
Which must mean I'm a bad person. In fact, if you're honest about it and say, you know what, I hear you and I'm so sorry I cannot provide that to you in our friendship. I'm not equipped to do that. I'm so sorry that hurts you, but I'm not going to lie and say I can and then fail again. That actually saying no to things is just saying yes to the things you're really committing to saying yes to. That is like every day I have to put that into practice.
I really got a lot of life organizing to do when I get out of here. You referred to your work as your theater habit. Is it more like a chemical addiction or like runner's high?
Oh, dear. It is kind of the bedrock of my social life, too, because I don't have the time to commit to outside friends like I would like to. A lot of my friends are in the theater, too. So, yeah, it is a little bit like a chemical addiction. It's one of the times I get to be social. I get to go into the rehearsal room. I get to be around a lot of people. So it's like I'm always jonesing for that. It's all of those things.
How do your kids feel about your work? Like, do they get that you're a big deal?
My daughter she's 11, and I think she is proud of being an In the Heights baby. I think she's very proud of that. And she
Because you went into labor in the middle of
I went into labor in the middle of In the Heights, right outside of the box office. And I had to go to the hospital, and she was born, while the show was being performed that night. So she takes a lot of pride in that. And when I won the Pulitzer, she was so proud. It almost makes me emotional. She was telling everyone. I said to her, please don't tell everyone. And she looked at me like I was crazy. Why would she not tell everyone? She was so proud of me. And so she told her classmates, and she couldn't say the word Pulitzer properly. She said Putzler, which was very sweet. I think, honestly, she probably takes it for granted a little bit at this point. Like, okay, when are we going backstage? That kind of thing. I'm like, oh, we don't always have to go backstage. We can just watch and be regular audience members, too.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I know you have a busy life, so let me make getting to our show even easier. You can catch us through your smart speakers. That's right. Google and Alexa know what's up. Just say, play Latina to Latina podcast to your Echo, Google Home, or whatever setup you have, and make your cooking, cleaning, or relaxing at home more interesting. Thanks for joining us today. Latina to Latina was originally co-created with Bustle. Now the podcast is owned and executive produced by Juleka Lantigua Williams and me. Maria Muriel was the sound designer on this episode. We want to hear from you. Tell us who you want to hear from and how you're making the show a part of your life. Email us at hola@latinatolatina.com. Remember to subscribe or follow us on Radio Public, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you're listening.